Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
All right, Andrea, here we go. You ready?
Ready.
All right.
When you said you ready, you remember that song with Jay-Z and Beyonce, the old three, Bonnie and Clyde? He's like, you ready? Let's go get him. That's like what I thought of.
Oh, my God. That song was so corny.
All right.
All right, here we go. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Andrea Perdomo-Hernandez, what's up?
What up, what up?
WBUR's transportation reporter. You are back. There's always something going on with the team.
Keeping all of us on our toes.
For real. Let's get into it. Andrea, there's a couple of things I want to talk with you about, but I want to get into the story you recently did about how pension costs could make the MBTA insolvent, which basically means broke with a capital B by 2038. So, Andrea, tell us what is going on.
So basically, we got our hands on this document that shows like what was going on in between like the negotiations between the T and the union when they were trying to reach a new kind of like agreement with their pension fund.
Yep.
And the document gives us kind of like a window into the finances of the pension fund.
Okay, let's look through that window. What are we seeing?
So it's interesting because like when you look at most pension funds, they're funded at like 70% or like 80% or 90%, you know? But the T's pension fund, according to this document, shows that they're only at 53% funded. The way pensions work is like employees contribute to it, the employer contributes to it, and then there's like investments that are made like with the contributions that are made, and that kind of helps to grow it. So like the profit from the investments plus the money that's being put into it kind of is like an equation that equals like the funding.
Okay.
So when you put all of that together, you know, normally, like let's say like in New York City, right? Like their pension fund, like their transit pension fund.
Yep.
That one's funded at 74%, right? And in Washington, D.C., their transit authority is funded at 82%. And to bring it back like to the state, the MBTA police pension fund is funded at 85%. So the T pension fund is only funded at 53%.
How do we get here?
It's been quite a journey because this document shows us that like in 2006, the fund was actually funded at like 90-something percent. So this decline has happened over like, let's say, like the last 20 years. And there have been multiple things that have contributed to this. Like a lot of people have been retiring. They haven't been really backfilling roles. So there's not as many people contributing to the fund. Those investments that I mentioned earlier haven't been performing so well. So it's like a kind of like a double or like a triple whammy of things that are happening kind of at the same time that the pension has been taking some financial hits. So the pension fund is actually paying out like $5 to $6 million more a month than it's actually taking in. So somebody has to cover that cost, right? So when we say that the T might be insolvent by 2038, just based on like the contributions that they're making to this pension fund, that's kind of what they're talking about. Because like you can only, you know, withdraw money from your account so much before they shut you down, right?
Yeah. So what will it take for the T to pull itself out of this mess?
Well, I spoke to some people who were at the union, and their president, Jim Evers, says he feels pretty confident that, like, as the T hires, you know, the T's aggressively trying to, like, hire and recruit and attain, like, new people, you'll have more people contributing to the fund, and it'll kind of help balance itself out. But I spoke with a Boston University finance professor, his name's Mark Williams, and he says hiring alone isn't going to solve this problem.
You need to reduce the excessive benefits, and or you need to increase the amount that's being paid in by those employees that eventually will benefit.
So basically, he's saying you can't just rely on more people contributing to it, right? Like, you're going to have to trim some of those benefits and you're going to have to increase the amount that people are actually contributing. Like, right now, I think they're contributing like 9% of their salary into the fund.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying they would have to increase that amount in order to kind of see this 50% be increased, over time.
Tell me, where does this projection fit into the larger financial picture?
Well, it's interesting to look at these projections just solely based on the pension fund and like the depletion or the devastation or the toll that it can take on the T in and of itself, because the T's been negotiating their budget and fare revenues aren't anywhere near where it used to be. It's been tagging off for the last couple of years because of the pandemic. Ridership's only at 61%. So that like revenue stream of like fares is not covering costs. So the T is like having to like pull from like pandemic relief funds or like other non-reoccurring sources of revenue. Like they're just tapping into like funds here and there to kind of cover costs. Yep. So that also is like putting the T in a precarious financial situation. So that budget gap from like the revenues being low and ridership being low and all that stuff, that could create the fiscal cliff that everyone's been talking about over the last couple of years. And we could see that as soon as like fiscal year 2025. So like in the next year or two. So based on the revenue problems and like the funding problems that the T, just operating costs that they have that they're facing right now, that puts them in quite a bind. And then like when you think about the pension stuff and like the effects that the pension could take on it, it's like they're fighting multiple financial battles on different ends.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more on the T.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And we are back. Okay, going back to what the professor said, what would help the situation with the pension costs is cutting other things, cutting other benefits. And you can't just hire your way out of this, right? What does that do to the T's hiring campaign? Because they still have a worker shortage that's impacting service. So if the way to help cover the costs of the pension fund is to cut benefits, that makes it harder to attract workers, no?
That was the union's argument. While the union and the T were kind of figuring out like the new terms of their agreement, one of the things that the T wanted to do was to raise the retirement age from 55 years old to 65. That was one of the things that they really wanted to do because they were like, oh, that's less time, that people will be pulling from the funds. And that ultimately got off the table because they're like, if you do this, it's going to have a negative impact on the workers that we already have. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, how are you making this job more appealing to future recruits?
Yep.
Like there is this tension of like, how do we keep this financially viable, right? And then also like, how do we make sure that this job is appealing to the people that we're trying to get? So there is kind of like that tension. And I haven't seen the final agreement, between the union and the T to really know like where they ended up landing on a lot of these things. But there's going to have to be some give on either side. It's not a situation where everybody gets everything that they want.
Andrea, before we go, I want to check in on Philip Ng. He started his position as the T's general manager a few weeks ago. And now that some time has passed, do you have a clear sense of what his priorities might be to get the system back on track, both service-wise and financially?
Well, the times that I've heard Ng speak publicly, He's been very much about like tackling multiple priorities at the same time. Like he's not like a one thing at a time kind of guy. You know, he's been very vocal about like hiring. He's been very vocal about transparency. He says he's a solutions-based guy, you know? So it's not entirely clear like what is like his number one thing or like where he's putting all of his energies first. However, he did attend his first like MBTA board meeting and he gave his first like general manager's report. And in that report, he talked about slow zones, specifically like along the blue line. And he kind of gave a game plan of when people can expect those slow zones to be lifted. And then he did say that he has a team of people working on similar reports for like the orange line and the red line. You know, so he's tackling that problem first to try to get the T up and running. That's what we know so far. And for people who are curious, all those blue line riders out there, he says that like slow zones are going to be lifted no later than November.
Damn.
But the reason why they're targeting the blue line first is because like the Sumner Tunnel is going to be closed for a portion of the summer. So they're trying to get the blue line up and running and ready ahead of that.
And I understand at this meeting, some riders expressed their frustration with the T.
Oh, yeah. So Ang's very first board meeting, he got to witness the board's public lashing that they got from a couple of riders who are really just frustrated and upset and just kind of done being told to be patient with the T. I have a comment actually from this one fellow during the public comment period. He did not give his name, but he was really upset.
I'm a tech at NGB, and I'm getting threatened to lose my job because I can't get to work on time because you people can't do your job. What is wrong with y'all? Ashamed. You need to all be ashamed of yourselves and step down. I don't know what you need to do, but none of you people need to be in this position. You're horrible.
That was one of the nicer ones.
Yeah?
You know, they should have had like a bleep machine on standby because people were really upset and not holding back. The comments were directed at the board, like telling them that they're ashamed, telling them they need to step down. One person called the service that she was experiencing disgusting. You know, like people were really upset.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's good for the board to hear that, you know, because that way it's harder to just think of riders as, you know, numbers on a paper. You know, these are people with experiences who have to get to work, who need to get to school, need to pick people up, and they're relying on your service.
I do want to say that, like, since that meeting, the Healy administration did replace 3 board members. Healy's not messing around. She has her new MBTA general manager. She got her board members on there. So who knows? This might really be a new chapter for the T. It'll be interesting to see what happens from here.
Well, Andrea, I'm very much looking forward to the work you're going to do. And, of course, please, please, please come on back to the Commons so we can talk all about it.
Of course. Thanks, Daryl.
That's WBUR transportation reporter Andrea Perdomo-Hernandez. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. If you have any thoughts on this episode, please hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common. You can also send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.